All right. We are joined by Shubhranshu Singh, business leader and global board member, FE Lions Foundation. Mr. Singh, thank you very much for joining us on our broadcast. We witnessed a historic India-US trade deal that was announced by US President Donald Trump. I want to understand from you, the past 6 months were probably turbulent for India Inc. Did we really, what was the kind of brunt, if you could tell us, that India Inc. witnessed over the past 6 to 7 months that tariffs were in place?
Well, on the one hand, I think people are associating the flight of capital away from India from the associated risks, and certainly I think that played a substantial, if not the critical part, in FIIs being tentative about continuing with the India investments. As you know, after a long drought, there was a net positive inflow across the developing world stock markets.
Right.
India was one exception where there was almost $19 billion of exit. But having said that, I must say this is a huge win for Prime Minister Modi and his team. This is a huge win for India. It's very gratifying and really very strengthening for our economic march forward that finally this has come. And it's also very pertinent to note that it comes right after the historic India-EU trade deal, which in turn came after several others were lined up, whether it's Oman or New Zealand and so on. So I think
Absolutely.
the traction that India has, the economic power that is being acknowledged, has now finally been endorsed by America. You asked me about how we faced the brunt of it. One was, of course, lukewarm interest in the markets, press button money in, press button money out.
Right.
And I can appreciate people doing profit booking, but even the net gross inflows were down. So that was one. Secondly, labor intensive sectors, commodity sectors, which depended a lot on American market access, did suffer in this interim period, but we suffered for good intent. I think finally it is a triumph. And I think now we have not only access to a great market,
Right.
but solidified by so many trade deals. So
Right.
great job for India, I think.
Right. Mr. Singh, when do you think we will see the kind of order book that may flow in right now? When do you think India Inc. numbers will start improving because of the trade deal? By which quarter can we expect that?
Pranab, when in doubt, look at the markets. The markets are delirious with joy, which means even though everybody was expecting it, it had not been fully factored in. So I think the relief will be felt immediately. But there is an important point which I want to highlight. Everybody is talking about oil, tariff, access to American markets. I, as a marketer, choose to take the other look, which is look at how critical India as a market is to American brand and business interest.
Absolutely.
You know, whether it's a Google, a Meta, a Netflix, a Visa, a McDonald's, you name it, Boeing, IBM, Deloitte, Accenture, who is not here for the long run? And these companies have an interest in striking route, in friend-shoring their supply chains, in having access to a tremendous, huge opportunity market where 400 million Indians are less than 20 years of age. And it's the largest economy which is growing flat out at 7+%, which
Right.
means
Yes.
every 10 years this economy will double. That
Right.
is the juicy prize for American commercial interest. And
Right.
so the minds have met. We need access to America. We need America as a partner in our economic progress. And America needs us too, make no mistake. American companies are here for good. There are massive investments, even in cutting edge areas like AI. The largest number of individual subscribers for, say, ChatGPT is in India, nowhere else. So let's make no mistake, it's a mutually beneficial association.
Hi, Shubhranshu, Shivam this side. I also want to ask Shubhranshu, one very important question here is, could this have been done a little earlier? Why this decision was taken now? Is it not an impact of what we did with the European Union, that is the free trade agreement that we had with the European Union? Why did Trump choose this time? And that too after the budget. Was this a reaction to counter the trade agreement that we are having with the European Union as a balance?
Well, I think, it's speculative to arrive at any judgment in the matter. Certainly, nations work on their self-interest and are pulled in a tug of war by various competing interests as well. So what you ask me is not outside the realm of what is plausible, that, there was a move towards accommodation because India was not budging. But I would again underline, endorse and spotlight Prime Minister Modi and his team, have not budged, have not, moved back, and have played the larger geopolitics of it with excellence, I would say. And I think that, along with American commercial interest, made this a reality.
Shubhranshu, the bears certainly were trapped yesterday. All those who were short India are suddenly long India. What do you think? The bears are converted now into bulls, and everybody outside India is long. Can we see foreign capital flowing in?
Well, I think it will continue unabated. I think there may be dips and troughs, but if you look at the long-term trend, we are amongst the top performing markets. There may have been FDI exit and FII exit in the period of 12 to 6 months. But I think over the long term, there has been continuous traction in the Indian economy, and the world acknowledges it. Again, do not read everything from what the market sentiment is. The market sentiment can be very reflexive. The market sentiment can be, asymmetric. The market sentiment can be injected with a lot of panic or delusional hope. So I think the market reaction on any given day has to be taken with a pinch of salt. But market reactions over a sustained period in time are, impeccable readings of economic and national sentiment. So certainly I think investments will come in, and this bullish trend will now be here for the mid to long term.
Shubhranshu, this trade deal was very important. If you can run us through the sectors also, because initially the sectors that we were worried about was the gems, the leather and other industry. If you can also run us through the sectors that will be benefiting in the shorter run and also in the longer run.
Yes, I think, you see, there are three levels. To my mind, I categorize it as the consumer apparent layer, then the middle layer, which is more infrastructural, and then really the platform or foundational layer. And let me explain that if you give me half a minute. The consumer apparent layer is, Indian access as branded companies, as branded offerings, and vice versa. So if you are having Kellogg's cereals in the morning, or are working on an Apple phone, or are going to Meta or Instagram and so on, you are working with the consumer apparent layer. There is an engagement with a branded entity. Then there is the middle layer, which is wired and unwired both, right? Which is cloud capital. So how your payrolls get processed, how your data is treated, where do the mainframe systems come from, where is engineering being imported from, critically defense technologies and so on. That's the middle layer. And then there is the really long-term power or foundational layer, which I think is also very important, whether it's the recently announced duty relief on nuclear energy, for example, or friend-shoring of electronic manufacturing. This is in the utilities layer, which it may not be nakedly visible to you and me, but it is important for the foundational strength of the economy. So I think what suffered in the interim period, as there was tentativeness about the economic progress with America, were unfortunately labor critical markets like textiles, marine products, gems and jewelry, etc., where America is a critical market. Also IT and IT enabled services,
yes,
because the back office of the world operates out of India, and Indian near shore or actual client location personnel tend to depend a lot on H1B, and that's something critical to watch out for, whether there will be immediate and consequential relief on that front as well. But I think in all sectors of the economy, America is the number one potential market for India, even as EU is the single largest trading bloc. And we are a beautifully symmetric economy. Our merchandise export and our services export are roughly balanced. I think both can grow, and both can grow on the back of a successful penetration of the American market further.
Definitely. Shubhranshu, if you can also tell us, what did Trump actually achieve by these tariffs? Did he gain something? Or did he understand that he was losing a lot rather than gaining? Because he went on praising himself for all the revenue that he was generating out of these tariffs and pressurizing all the world economies. Many countries, he imposed tariffs on many countries. What's your response on that?
No, I think there is prudence and there is reactivity both. I think on the one hand, there is a political backing that President Trump has. This has been sustainably growing over a period in time in terms of the sentiment that America was being taken for granted, that America was providing sustenance and succor to many, many constituents across the world without there being fair reciprocity. That's the position, as I understand it, that he has taken. If I do things for you, I expect either a bill to be serviced or for you to do things back for me, which he felt in many cases was not happening, and America was unilaterally or single handedly footing the bill. So there was some adjustment to his mind and in his administration to make that a more level playing field. But I think equally importantly, ever since the Second World War with the Bretton Woods Conference, America had laid the foundations for a rules-based system. It had effectively sacrificed its monetary policy to ensure that the dollar becomes the reserve currency across the world. And I think with the emergence of China, there was a growing recognition that this rule-based system where America becomes the default provider is actually handicapping them. And so therefore there are phased withdrawals from that, saying that our national self-interest is above all political niceties and good language. So we must make sure our house is in order and play by new rules. And that, I think, very boldly, very assertively, you may not like the style, but President Trump has been asserting America's interest above all. And that's his prerogative to do that.
Shubhranshu, well, I mean, we saw over the past 6 months that there was no trade deal and the kind of arm twisting that was going on. We saw a number of deals signed. I mean, India expanded its export base to various other countries, including the UK, Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, Australia, UAE, and now the US. Do you think the kind of demand that these deals are going to generate for India, and do you think the Indian industry is prepared? Is the Indian industry really looking forward to a healthy order book as we enter Q4?
I think the order book never went away. I think the orders were deferred. You see, one of the negatives of sentiment-based trade is I postpone to tomorrow. And naturally, if the tariff makes the whole equation unviable, ultimately tariffs also have a repercussion in the sense that the American consumer pays for them. I mean, there are various ways in which you can argue this out, economically speaking, but the level set that has been done now is actually beneficial for both. And I would not necessarily call it arm twisting. This is a game of give and take. This is a game of push and push back. Style can be moderated. Style can have, we can offer a critique. But I think everybody knows this is about national self-interest as people see it. Indians have their own national self-interest, hence we have moved in several other directions. Americans have, as traditionally as the number one power on the planet, have their own mindset and want to play by their own rules. So I would not call it arm twisting. I would call it a bold self-interest on both ends.
Thanks a lot, Shubhranshu, for your insight and your deep analysis on what's happening right now on India-US trade deal. Pranav, a detailed explanation